So this Sunday is going to wrap up a very long sermon series that we've been working through on the marks of a Christian. What is it to look like to be a Christian? Does it look like what you wear? Does it mean you don't have any tattoos? Does it mean you can't have any beer? Does it mean that, I don't know, you with the sides of your hair and wear, I don't know, tassels under your clothes, right? Like our Jewish brothers or sisters do. The mark of being a Christian is that we understand there's a God above all gods. That should go without saying. That there is a God is obvious, but there are many gods in this world, and ours, the one that we worship, is the best, knows the best for us, and is above all other gods. The other mark of being a Christian is to recognize that we are drawn away from that God. It really, truly is one of those things. You have to admit the fact that there are other things that you put in front of your God. And until you can admit that you put other things in front of your God, then maybe you are your own God. And so when we can admit that we choose popularity, we choose things that are easy, we choose things that are less difficult, that we choose to only give God a part of our life instead of all of our life, is part of being a Christian. And that Christian life has consequences. Another mark of being a Christian is that you will be persecuted. If you're doing it right, you will find yourself at some point against the culture that you are in. For various reasons, not all of them bad. It will be, though, that you will do things, that you will choose things, that you will find yourself at odds with what the world is telling you to do. The mark of being a Christian is to bear fruit. Jesus said over and over and over that if you are to be my children, if you are to be the heirs in my kingdom, that you will bear fruit. And one of the highest fruits that we hold is martyrdom, which is the ultimate of all the fruits. It is to say that I refuse to compromise my faith so much that even in the face of my own death, I choose that rather than anything coming between me and my God. And there are many Christian martyrs, and we can go into them. And I think maybe you should. I don't want to go into there, but what I do want to go into is if I asked you to be a martyr, you might think that is an impossibility. Or maybe you say, yeah, sure, yeah, I can do that. That'd be all right. And then I would say you're lying. And let's talk about what it is to be a Christian. Let's all the way walk back there. Because to be a martyr is it's obscene. It really, truly is. To say that I would rather die than compromise my faith. Just think about that for half a second. That means that you understand your faith so clearly, so obviously, that when somebody would come and ask you to compromise your faith, you would say, no, that's not even a possibility. I would sooner die. Now, fortunately, we're not asked to do that, but we are nonetheless asked to do some very difficult and impossible things. And I was trying to think about what it is that might be very difficult for us to do. And what I came to is actually is to point out how beautiful America is. Because we live in a wonderful nation. I think you know that. I hope you know that. Right? And one of the beauties about America is that we can worship as we want to. Could you imagine if you had to pay money to be in here? So just to come to this building, I'm not talking about your offering. I'm not talking about, whatever you paid to fill up your gas tank. I'm talking about to walk in this building, some government official said you had to have a stamp. And unless you paid $1,000 a month to get into that stamp club, you weren't allowed into this building. Would you do that? Well, if you wouldn't do that, then how would you think that you would die? But of course, those are the standards Jesus calls us to do. One of the things that we learned the last time I preached was that Jesus' standards aren't just high, they are the highest. In fact, they are so high that you can't reach them. That is, that they are perfection. Jesus calls us to perfection. And here's what happens. As soon as I say that you need to be perfect, you know what happens in your brain? Because it happens in my brain. It goes like this. Oh, okay, I got to be perfect, but I can't be perfect. I'm a human, so I guess I'm off the hook. But that's not the case. He didn't let us off the hook. You are to be perfect. End of the story. You're not supposed to not be perfect, and when you fall short, you have failed. I went running with this guy on accident. I was running, he was coming down 220, he was doing one of these run walks, it was a hot day, and I caught up to him. and he was just dying. And when I came up to him, I gave him that, come on, you know. And he didn't even give it a second thought. He just went right into it. Now, I hate running with people. I hate running with people because either one of two things happens. Either you run slower than me, and now I gotta figure out that pace, or you run faster than me, and my ego just got hurt, and I don't want to. Go, keep going. So I don't run with people, but I for whatever reason I decided I was going to run with this guy. So we were running, and as we're running, I said, we're going to run across the street, and then we'll walk in the shade. So we're going, and we get in the middle of the road, and I get across the street, and then I start walking, and he started walking in the middle of the road, and then he catches up. And we're walking for a little bit, and I say, okay, now we're going to run. We're going to run to the end of the street, and then once we cross the street, we'll start walking again. And we're going, and we're going, and we're going, and about the middle of the road again, before he actually gets across, he stops and he starts walking. And then he walks up on the sidewalk, and we start walking again. This is what happens in our mind. As soon as we know that there's this line that we're going to stop here, we don't stop here, we stop back here. You stop in the middle of the road because you know you're going to stop there. But as soon as you lower that bar, what happens is you stop running before you get to the road, as soon as you get to it. And soon enough, you don't stop running until, hey, I'm almost to the road. I'm 10 feet away. And soon enough, you're like, well, I can see the road. And then what happens? You just start walking. You never actually ran anymore. Jesus is our drill instructor telling us that we're all losers and that we had better get to it. Hop to it. Go. Now, go. And he says this to Peter up on the mountain. They go up in the mountain. And when the first time I read this, I thought, hey, Peter and James and John, these must be like the special disciples. But then I realized, they're not the special disciples. They're the special disciples. They need a little extra help. They need somebody to tell them all the things that they didn't quite figure out, which is why Jesus brings them, because they're not going to figure it out any other way. So he brings them up in the mountain, and Peter goes, hey, this is great. Let's just hang out here. And Jesus is like, no, man. We haven't even crossed the road yet. We got to get down this mountain. That's where the work is. If we stayed up here on this mountain, where would the salvation come from? He says, no, we got to get down there. So Jesus kicks him down the mountain. He says, no, go. You got to go. You got to go. The bar is higher. And, of course, I hope you remember and you know the story of Peter. Especially right now in Lent, the story of Peter is amazing and beautiful because Peter is the biggest loser. And he ends up being transformed. And this is the idea that Jesus will transform us as we are his disciples, as we practice his faith. If you weight train, you'll be stronger. If you start running distances, biking distances, cross-country ski out there, I don't care, you will become more enduring. If you study in school, you'll become smarter. How do you strengthen your soul? How is your spirit strengthened? That happens with discipline, which, by the way, is the same as the word disciple. Do you hear the two in there? That's not a mistake. Because to be a disciple means that you are disciplined. To be disciplined means that you are a disciple. And Jesus tells us in very plain language that the bar is higher than you think it is. Who will you do? What will you do? Will you love your enemy? When the enemy is bearing down on you, attacking you, will you love them? Can you? If you're hurt, if you've been betrayed, if you've been forsaken, if you've been straight out hated, can you forgive that person? Jesus doesn't say anything about maybe you should. He says you should. If you know you're the best, if you know that you're good, if you know that your skill and your talent and all your hard work has made you the top dog, can you still be a servant? Jesus doesn't make any equivocal about it. He says, absolutely, the first among you will be last. You should be servants. My prayer, our prayer, is that you never have to find yourself in these situations that Jesus talks about. We pray this in the Lord's Prayer, right? That we might be delivered from the temptation, delivered from the time of trial. And the thing is, all of this stuff is pie in the sky. It's going in one ear and it's coming out the other ear until it actually hits you. Until you actually find an enemy in your life, would you actually love them? And the problem with this all being up in the clouds, that you're not hearing me right now, is because when it happens in your life, what you'll say is the same thing we all say. Well, not me. Jesus wasn't talking about this situation. He was talking about other situations and other people. It doesn't actually have to do with me here and now. And the essence of immorality is the tendency to make oneself an exemption. I'm going to say that again. The essence of immorality, the first step to evil, happens when we think we're special. This is why we have Lent. This is why we discipline ourselves. Because my prayer is that your life is peace-filled, that you never know enemies. My prayer is that you always have people who treat you with loving kindness, who care for you and fill you up with goodness. My prayer for you is that you are always recognized for all the things that you do, that all of the goodness, all of the talent, all the skills that you bring into the environments that you find yourself in, that everybody recognizes how good you are at those and lifts you up. But the reality is that's not going to happen. We don't live in fairy tales. You all have bosses that are incompetent, and you have to deal with them, who think that they're awesome, and you know that they're not. You will all deal with people who are selfish and have no idea that anybody else in this world exists but them. And you're going to have to deal with that. We have enemies. You will make enemies. There will be people in your life that straight up hate you. And so when sin and evil enter into your life, will you be wrathful or will you be peace-filled? Will you be vindicated? Will you go out? Will you find some retribution? Will you bring the revenge, or will you be grace-filled? Will you be prideful because you know that you're the best, or will you be humble and be a servant? We don't want to be Peter. We don't want to stay up in the clouds and think that this stuff doesn't come down. It will come down. The rubber will hit the road. And you can be transfigured, transformed, made into the being that God needs you to be. Did you hear that? Needs you to be. Because if you aren't bringing the marks of a Christian, who is bringing the marks of a Christian? If you aren't bringing Christ with you, where is Christ? And so when you find yourself in these situations, you should do everything you can. Beg, plead, scream to God that the Holy Spirit might enter into your life, that He might change you, reform you, push you, prod you, guide you, lead you. And when the opportunities come that you might strengthen those spiritual muscles, you must grab them. Wednesday is that opportunity. We're going to start Ash Wednesday. We're going to spend 6 weeks. It's 40 days minus the Sundays. Everybody gets a Sabbath. To work on your relationship with God. To work on being stronger. To tap into God's power. Because God is powerful and He wants to use that power. He wants to pour it into you. That's the whole essence of the Holy Spirit, is that you are not alone, that you are blessed. At your baptism, God claimed you. And so here's what I want you to do. Sometimes we say, hey, you know what, for Lent, you should take something on. We've got lots of Bible studies. I ordered extra devotionals. They're in the little roundabout there. Everybody grab one. Everybody do that. But what I want you to do is not take something on. I don't want you to read the Bible more this Lent. I don't want you to pray more this Lent. I don't want you to do that. I want you to fast. What do I mean by fast? I mean deliberately abstaining from physical gratification for your spiritual well-being. Physical gratification, what does that mean? Well, that doesn't just mean sleeping in more, but it can. It means all of the things of the flesh. I want you to find something that makes your flesh happy, whether that is sleeping in more, whether that is eating meat, whether that is eating ice cream or sweets or soda or beer or alcohol or anything that passes through your mouth, I want you to take something and I want you to give it to God and I want you to put it away. I want you to find an opportunity to inflict upon yourself, your physical being, something that will hurt. Don't whip yourself. When you get a text message, I want you to pray before you're allowed to answer that text message. Instead of Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram or Twitter or Reddit or any other social media you're on, I want you to get rid of that. Was that too high? Remember, Christ calls us to the impossible. If you can't get rid of Facebook, what happens when Satan decides that you're on his bullseye? I want you to get rid of soda, candy, alcohol, sweets, meats. Can you do that? If you can't do that, then when temptation rears its head, you're sunk. You're done. You're over with. If you can't say no to a hot dog, how are you going to say no to something you really want? I don't know what that looks like in your life, but I want you to push it. And I want you to push it so much that you fail. I want you to fail. I want you to fail because if you don't know how to fail and get back up, then you don't know what it is to be a Christian. And I want you to fail, and then I want you to succeed. I want you to realize that you're stronger than you think you are. I want you to know that God is active in your life and pushing you. I want you to see that you are not whatever is in your head. You are the being that God has called you to be. And you're not weak, and you're not old, and you're not young, and you're not stupid, and you're not slow, and you're none of those things that the world tells you you are. You are a child of God. And the only way you can know that is if you push the limits. And here it is. I want you to find your limits, and then I want you to step past them. And that only happens if you're willing, if you're ready. Get ready. Wednesday's the day that we start this. And I want you to push it. Because it is in the pushing that you're transformed. It is in the bearing great burdens that your back becomes stronger and your soul is no different. When Easter comes, I want you to say, I have been transformed. When Easter comes, I want you to say, I have been resurrected a new being. I am not the same being that was killed on Ash Wednesday. I am something bigger, something stronger. I am the being, if only a glimpse of the being that God has called me to be. I want you to own that and recognize that God has called you to it. So there are a lot of ways in which you can go through Lent, but this Lent, I want you to fast. Don't eat on Mondays. Don't eat when the sun is up. Don't eat for a week. Is that too much? I can't answer that. But I know that you can bear the marks of Christ wherever you are. And if you don't bear the marks of Christ, where is Christ if He's not with you? But if He's with you, you can be transformed into the being that He has called you to be. The season has come, be transformed.